Oh, I'm saying yes. T. Uh, Welcome everybody. Thanks for being here. We don't want to hold everybody's time, so we can get started and then have other folks jump in. My name is Patrice Brown. I'm the Associate Director of Urban Agriculture in the city of Detroit, inside the Office of Sustainability. Happy to be here. Um, Tafira and Owen, do y'all want to introduce yourself?
I'll go. All right. My name's Owen Deacher. I am a development associate at Lightstar Renewables. We were awarded today, just this afternoon, the two sites, State Fair and Gratiot Finley. So really excited to talk about, agri-voltaics as a potential solution for neighborhoods, and more about kind of just what agri-voltaics means and potential projects for it. So I'll pass it over to T.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. You may or may not know, I think I know most of you on the call, but I used to be at KGD and joined the city just last year. I'm now serving as Director of Sustainability and super excited to be co-leading this neighborhood solar initiative. Um, since um, since I've last talked to you all, I've definitely learned more about this project. Last fall, we did a workshop with Jack, who was the former sustainability director. And I had my concerns and my questions about how this project would roll out. As I learned more, I got more excited about the project. As I drove the neighborhoods that the city was considering siting these solar fields in, I understood that the same way we in the urban gardening community have been looking at vacant land for so long and trying to figure out solutions, that this was potentially one piece of the pie, in addition to all the land treatments that we are already doing across the city, to take up vacant space in our city that sometimes is uh, for all the beauty of the green grass, also comes with all of the things that we know comes with vacant land. So I began to get excited about the project. One of the first things that when I first heard about this project, Jack pulled me in the room and he's like, we got this project, and guess what? We can do farming underneath the panels. Let's talk about it. So, city has always been thinking about how do we have this dual use of solar and farming. Um, so there's that. And then also all of the landscaping that will go around these sites. What does that look like? How do we make these sites as beautiful as we can for the neighbors and for Detroit, and also so that people um, have a good taste in their mouth for clean and renewable energy that these will be generating. Um, so really, when Owen first got on the project here, he reached out immediately. I was really taken aback by his openness. And, sometimes developers can be, a little scary to approach. Um, and Owen has been totally all about, from the very beginning, how do we make this the best project we can for community, which is what I'm all about, and what needs to happen. And so we got to talking about this this concept. Owen's been doing some of this work previously in other cities, and here to share more with the farming community, what this looks like for our city, what this could look like for our city. I do want to preface the conversation around the fact that uh, we are really focused on listening to communities that these solar sites will be in. And so we're going to have a lot of dialogue around what farming can look like under the solar panels. But I do want to say that for these 3 sites that were passed this afternoon by council, we are really going to be leaning in on the neighbors to tell us what they want. So we'll present agrivoltaics as an option for the neighbors. We'll also present, native plants and all kind of fencing options. We're going to go into some design meetings with the neighbors to make these the best that they can be. And so I want to preface the conversation with that, but I thought that I'm trying to introduce Owen to all the cool farmers that I know who would be interested in this idea and this topic and this kind of dual land use, which provide for sustainable cities. So I'm happy to answer any and all questions about the solar project if they come up. But I really wanted to share this kind of technology of how we could move forward in a new way for cities. This is something that has not been done before in this way. And so Detroit will be a leader. We've already been a leader in farming, and doing this dual use is going to be amazing. All right. I have been head down all day. So Patrice, you take it away and tell me where you want me to start and where you want Owen to start with this the slide deck that you created.
For sure. I hope y'all like our slides because I did. Again, thanks for being here, everybody. We're really happy that you joined us. This is an educational session. We were not sure if council was going to pass it today, but they did, so yay. It's a lot of hard work behind that being passed today. So shout out to T and Owen and all of the folks in the community that stood up and came to talk on behalf of the solar project and specifically around agrivoltaics. We had a few farmers join us in a press conference earlier this morning, encouraging council to pass it. So we have a couple slides we want to share with you guys today around what is agrivoltaics. The agenda today, real quick, we want to talk about we're going to introduce ourselves, and we did that already. And then we'll look at overview and updates of the solar proposal in Detroit. T, that's going to be your jam. And then really talking about what the Office of Sustainability does. I think a lot of people in this space is really learning with us what the Office of Sustainability does, and then how urban ag fits into the Office of Sustainability. So T and I are working as I would call it a dynamic duo. So we're bringing that environmental piece and food piece to the forefront, and we're trying to do a lot of things. So we'll talk about a little bit of overview of what the office is, updates on the solar proposal that's going that has been approved by council, and then an overview of urban ag itself. I wanted to spend a little time today and really talk about what we are doing in the urban ag space as it relates to what you might be doing on your farms, whether they be backyard or community, or if you're in the land purchasing process. We just want to give a quick overview of what that is, and I'll handle that part of the presentation, and then Owen is going to jump in and kind of go into what agrivoltaics really is. He's been around the country visiting different sites, Lightstar also has several different projects happening around the country, so he can talk more about that and kind of give us a good definition of what agrovoltaics is. And then we're going to open it up for questions. And then if you're interested in agrovoltaics, we want to hear from you more. As T spoke about, we're going to do community engagement. So we want farmers and those who um, grow in the city. We want you guys to come to the table and tell us about what you want to see in these type of projects. So T, you can take it away. Can you talk about what the Office of Sustainability is? I just pulled this from the website.
Sure thing. And I think Owen was asking if you want to switch over to present mode
How do
so
I
it's
do
If
that?
bigger.
you could,
Please.
yeah, the non-present mode so we can see the slides a little bit bigger.
Oh, how do I do that?
I think
Tell
you
me.
just say end slideshow up at the top,
Okay, and then tell me what to do.
and then that's fine. Just like, or you can, yeah, this is a little bit bigger. So,
Okay, can you see?
yep,
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Let me
all
go.
good.
Okay.
Okay, so the Office of Sustainability is underneath the mayor's office. And so in years past, uh, this work has fallen under different departments, most notably general services. And so moving it into the mayor's office was strategic in that it allowed sustainability to be have a little bit more teeth as it relates to the work. And why that's important is because sustainability really leans on partnerships across the city to get work done. So we take an inventory of what's happening across the city in many departments and how we can be more sustainable in all of our actions. So whether that's more sustainable housing, more sustainable mobility, more sustainable land use, all of those things create a combined effort for the city. The work is really led by the Sustainability Action Agenda that happened in, oh, test my knowledge, I think it was 2018-19. And that was under former director Joel, who many of you may know in community because he is also a Garden Resource Program member and came out of this community. Amazing person. Um, and so he led the Sustainability Action Agenda, which many of us went to all the meetings to produce that body of work. Inside of that body of work, though, called for a more strategic plan around how to address climate change in particular. So the sustainability agenda was really broad. It talked about, hey, we need transportation, we need housing, we need all the things that Detroiters thought, what sustainability meant. Inside of there was couched. We also need to address our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's done through this climate and climate strategy, which came out in the fall. So this is a recent development in the city. We have not really had a chance to shop it around too much, as you know. I came to the position in April, or you may know. And so we are still in the process of really sharing with community what this strategy all entails. But just to give you a little background, 2 seconds background, I'll go a little bit deep, but follow me. I'll only take 2 seconds, I promise. But 2015, all cities, all nations came together under the UN Paris Climate Agreement, and they agreed to lower our global greenhouse gas emissions. Um, and this is a pact that happened between nations. It wasn't anything that they necessarily were penalizing people for, but it was an agreement, and it really put the onus on developed countries more than countries who have um, been the burden bearers of developed countries, I would say. So developed countries took on more of the onus of reducing their emissions. And so America was right in there. Shortly after, we had a presidential administration that pulled us out of that climate agreement amongst nations. And many Americans were mad about that. We were one of the only nations that weren't in there. And so Detroit stepped up along with other cities to form the Mayor Climate Pact, which said no matter what the federal government is doing, we're going to still hold true to those agreements that we made across the nation to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And Detroit got really busy with creating a strategy to do that. And so that's kind of how this work generated. We created the climate strategy. We also passed the greenhouse gas ordinance. So we have specific targets in Detroit around how much greenhouse gas we want to reduce. We also have a benchmarking ordinance, which calls for all buildings to eventually report how much energy and water they're using. So these were tremendous strides that happened. But the climate strategy really calls for these four tenets: transitioning to clean energy, increasing sustainable mobility, um, looking at energy efficiency and reducing waste, and then prioritizing vulnerable residents. This particular project, obviously, most notably falls under our strategy one of transitioning to clean energy. And this is something that all cities, all governments are looking at right now: how to move from fossil fuels. And, our grid in Michigan is mostly made up of natural gas and coal, which when you put those in the air, are no good for the planet or for our bodies. And so all cities are figuring out how to transition. So I remember about 2 months ago now, we put this proposal in front of council. Now, it went in front of council 2 months ago, but the work on the ground had been happening since about June of 2023. At that time, the mayor had an idea which he announced at a meeting, and he said, you know, we need to transition to clean energy. We know we need to transition to clean energy. What if we utilize our vacant space in Detroit to do that? The Department of Neighborhoods put out an RFP for neighborhoods to apply, neighborhoods who had a great amount of vacant land to apply for this. And 60 neighborhoods stepped up and said, this would be a good option for us. So the Department of Neighborhoods went out along with the Office of Sustainability, went out and looked at the sites that the neighbors were proposing, talked to neighbors, eventually based on just the amount of land that was needed and the number of neighbors that we needed to that wanted to do it, we dwindled down to 19 that were interested. So each 19 neighborhood got partnered with some folks who are really good at this work, in terms of clean energy work, to explain all the logistics. And from there, last fall, we went down to 8 finalists, 8 neighborhoods who had neighbor buy-in and the amount of vacant land that we needed to site solar fields. And that's what went up to council a couple weeks ago. That was 2 developer contracts to create these. Lightstar Renewables is one of those developers. We also put in a resolution to purchase. We already owned, say, in the first 3 neighborhoods, there were about 900 lots that needed to be purchased, of which we already owned about 700. And so there was a few that we needed to purchase, and that was all in the resolution of necessity to create, in this first round, 21 megawatts of energy.
Sweet. That sounds so cool. If y'all have questions, please put them in the chat. We're gonna keep moving along. I cannot see the chat, so if y'all can help me with the chat, that'd be great.
I got you in the chat, Patrice. Do you want me to just jump in if there are questions?
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. That's fine.
Okay.
So real quick, just a couple of slides about urban ag within the Office of Sustainability. I want to say that because a lot of people didn't really know where urban ag office stood. A lot of people when they are emailing T&I, they're a little bit confused, and you can tell by how they're labeling our different titles, and they think it's a different office for urban ag. So want to make it very clear that urban agriculture is sitting in the Office of Sustainability, and with T leadership, I'm able to kind of navigate the role. I learned from what she did in her first few months at the city in the role, and then kind of help solidify the role and lay the foundation of what it will look like, even if I'm not in the role, which I'm not going nowhere. I just want to be very honest. I'm here. So a couple things that the urban ag role kind of entails is to help assist residents with land-based project ideas. There is a land-based projects networking hours. We'll talk about that in the next slide. We also have been doing a lot of letters of support for our urban ag partners around different grant projects that they want to lift up. So we do have a process in the Office of Sustainability on how we get the letters of support out. So we can share that with you guys. If you reach out to us, I'll share my email at the end. We also help in that land-based projects space as well. We call it permit to purchase process. So we take you all the way through getting the land if you are acquiring land from the Detroit Land Bank Authority or DLBA. We are kind of sitting with you every step of the way, from the purchase to actual permitting. And some of the other things that we have goals to do is to create a website for urban ag in the city, in the city's website. So we want to embed that in somewhere. We also want to communicate around environmental and climate impacts as it relates to farming. So T and I are synergizing in ways that help bring that data to life. And we know that farms impact the environment in a positive way, and it can be negative, and it depending on where the farm is and what scale the farm is operating under. And so what we want to do is highlight the benefits around urban farming and what it really brings around the value that it brings to our community. So we want to highlight that and set goals around the different environmental and climate impacts. And so that's what we're working on. I would say now it's kind of like top of mind for us. We also lastly want to build strong relationships with community partners to fortify urban ag in the city. A lot of people don't know we are at the will of the mayor. So if the mayor wants the office of sustainability around or urban ag seat in this space, we are at the will of the mayor. So we want to fortify our position in the city, but we need you guys to help us through and with that. And we want to say we serve a purpose. And today, I think we solidified that purpose that we serve in ways that people really haven't really been thinking about. The one of the big projects I think that I'm finding in the role is the land-based projects. It was something that I formerly worked at the Eastern Market for 9 years, and the land-based projects team is something that is a team that I engaged with when I wasn't with the city. So I would show up to the office hours. We have monthly networking office hours every first Thursdays of the month. You can find these particular things on the website. So I'll put this link in the chat once I'm able to do that in a second. We do have interdepartmental meetings, land-based project meetings, and that consists of several city departments and the Detroit Land Bank Authority. We come together, we talk about the different concerns that's coming out of the neighborhoods around these land-based projects. We talk about how long it takes for folks to purchase land. That's one of the biggest topics. We talk about the different accessory uses to urban farms in these bi-monthly meetings, and we want to flush out any concerns that you guys might have as residents and urban farmers, so that we can address your concerns better and more immediate. One of the things that I really enjoy is the committee meetings in the land-based project space. One of the first things that I did right before I took the role, was go on a composting tour. So one of the committees that come out of the land-based project work is a composting work group. And so what we're doing with the composting work group is we're doing our best to work with as many composters or haulers in the city as possible, bringing them to the table, and getting their ideas of how we can either make their operations legal in certain cases, and then getting them the right permits to do what they're doing with compost now in the neighborhoods, making sure that they are zoned properly for what they're doing now. And then a couple other things we're working on is how to look at different scales of composting and what we do in the future with composting. Like, how does that look in the city? Do you want us to collect a citywide composting kind of operation or start one? How does that look, and how do we make sure that we don't traumatize our existing composters in the city in ways that doesn't benefit them or their business models? And so that's one of the first committee like things that I did when I joined, and I am really grateful to learn as much as I can about composting, and those tours were very fun. Like, we got to meet farmers. Farmers weren't scared to have us on the site because we are um inspectors that's coming out, and so it wasn't like a fear thing. It was like, keep an open mind. We're not going here to ticket anyone. We are just going to um observe and give the growers and the farmers feedback. So these are the couple of things that I wanted to highlight today. There's much more that we do. A lot of it is relationship building and making sure we answer questions and get responses to our residents in the urban ag space or farming space in the city as quickly as possible. So I've been working through those questions that people have, issues that they've been having with the city. It's a lot more to the role, but I just wanted to highlight these two areas. And then Owen, you're up next.
Great. Well, thank you, Kikra in Detroit, and T and Patrice for organizing this. I'm very happy to kind of talk about AgriVolatics and how it relates with the city of Detroit and this solar initiative. So a little bit of background about Lightstar. Our company is based in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm residing in Philadelphia, PA, but our portfolio and our projects really take us across the country. We have about 1,200 megawatts of projects in development, and about nearly half of those are agrivoltaic projects, about 500 megawatts. And agrivoltaics, as I'm going to go to the next slide, is the combination of agriculture and solar, where you can farm or graze animals underneath and between the panels. And so this Baldwin Grassley definition is what we've been lobbying at federal level to include in the latest iteration of the Farm Bill whenever that passes, because getting a federal definition of agrivoltaics is meaningful, not only just from getting recognition from the federal government that this is legitimate and evolving technology, but also for grant opportunities. Being able to have a definition to point to would be entirely beneficial for, USDA, DOE, other departments to be able to kind of, utilize this definition to kind of put out RFPs and, dispense money to farmers and developers across the country. And so the Baldwin Grassley definition talks about is agrivoltaic system means a system under which solar energy production and agricultural production, including crop or animal production, occurs in an integrated manner on the same piece of land through the duration of a solar project. For Lightstar, we love production. About 90% of our projects that do agrivoltaics are crop focused. But there's also a couple of other kind of types of, some people say it's agrivoltaics, but we don't really consider it. And that includes apiaries and sheep grazing. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, DOE, Department of Energy, and USDA, United States Department of Ag. And then RFP is a request for proposals. Apologies. And I'm going to say ag PV instead of agrivoltaics because agrivoltaics is a long word. So if I do abbreviate that, that's what it means, ag PV. On our sites, we try not to utilize sheep grazing and apiaries. We consider those mainly ecovoltaics, where you can build a normal solar project and then put those agricultural solutions, whether that's pollinators, sheep, and apiaries on top of a project without really having to modify it that much. We consider agrivoltaics, meaningful production, but also accommodating that agricultural use from the beginning of the project. And so you can go to the next one. What are the kind of typical project specs for an agrivoltaics project? So what we kind of utilize in terms of the height of the panels. So if you're thinking about a panel at completely flat, and here's like a post right here, the typical height is between 6 and 9 feet. The 6 and 9 feet really depends on, what kind of panels we're using, what's the agricultural use. There's a number of different factors that kind of determine the height that we kind of utilize for these projects. For the row spacing, similar kind of narrative. Based on the agricultural use, how we've laid out the site, it typically ends up being 30 to 40 feet between post to post. And then for our kind of minimum acreage, what we need to be able to kind of do 5 megawatts AC, so like the largest system size for community solar, which is what we typically do. It's about 32 acres for commodity crop. So that's soy and hay. We haven't found a agrivoltaic solution to work with corn yet, but we're trying. Especially crops, so that's kale, tomatoes, peppers, berries. That's all inclusive of especially crop. Grazing, so that's cattle, mainly it's really just cattle at this point for us. And then hay has a slightly lower acreage requirement than commodity crops, but it's typically around the same for between 30 and 32 acres minimum. And so some of the crops that we can grow underneath panels and between them include soy, hay, tomatoes, strawberries, blueberries, peppers, lavender, and others as they kind of evolve with the research and understand kind of where the growing conditions, present on the site in the different, climatic zones throughout the United States. And then in terms of livestock, like I mentioned before, sheep, we're exploring pigs as well too, cow, and chickens. And yeah, we utilize agricultural fencing, and it would be similar fencing for the Detroit projects, but we're gonna, consult with the community to kind of see what fencing they want on sites. And then we also have accessible gates so that farmers can be able to kind of get their equipment on and off sites and have laydown points so they can put their stuff in locations throughout. All right, move on to the next slide. So in terms of what these projects end up looking like, we have a project in Wappinger Falls, New York, that is being under construction right now. It's about 15 acres, 2.6 megawatts DC. The site was a historic hayfield that's been farmed by the Thompson brothers for the last generation. They really like the idea of agrivoltaics, and they're actually pivoting to do a variety of specialty crops. So their plan is to do strawberries, blueberries, tomatoes, peppers, lavender, and other produce underneath and between the panels. And these are the kind of specs that we're utilizing for the site. It's about 8-foot tall racking. So the panels are up 8 feet off the ground. We have a question from the crowd. I'll get back to that in just 1 second. And then rooms for tractors to be able to turn around and also access between the panels. And the farmer, the Thompson brothers, are really excited about the frost protection, especially in upstate New York. Or it's not really upstate. Well, it really depends on your definition of what is upstate or not. But early or late frost can really destroy a crop, and so the frost protection, because of the microclimate that panels create, can help shield the crop so that they can stay alive and not die in those kind of late frosts, especially in like early May when they start planting. Just want to answer this question in the chat. It says that sites will be accessible for farm equipment at planting and harvest. Does that mean equipment can't be used during the growing season? No, equipment can be utilized during the growing season. So tractors can fit between the panels. Is the intent to use farm labor? And the intent is to use farm labor throughout the process. So farm equipment can be able to go on the site. When we harvest and plant, what we do typically, just to give the farmers a little more room, is we can tilt the panels and contort it so that we can put them in a stow position. So they go completely vertical, so that farm equipment can go in between the panels without having to feel like they're kind of squeezing, between. And so farmers can have that flexibility and also alert Lightstar when they want to do that. But typically during harvest or when they're harvesting and also when they're seeding, they have sometimes larger equipment that's utilized for that. And so the extra space on either side of the tractor ends up being a benefit to them. So this is a layout of the old Meyer site that I just mentioned. So you can see on the site there is a couple of different crops that are being purported here. Blueberries, lavender, strawberries, and then the mixed vegetable zone. And so after each growing season, Lightstar consults with our agronomist that we consult with and the farmer on site and come up with what are the lessons learned from this last growing season? Do we want to modify some of these planting areas to be able to increase maybe, let's just say lavender or increase the mixed vegetable zone? We understand for blueberries, it takes about 3 years for the bush to establish and actually start fruiting. And so we expect that zone to actually take a little bit longer to really establish and get going. But for some of the other zones, depending on maybe the market conditions and, the direct consumer lines, the farmer has flexibility after the first growing season, every growing season, to follow, to be able to make accommodations and recommendations of what they think would be beneficial. And we come up with a new plan for that next growing season. So great question about the panel microclimates in the chat. So underneath panels actually creates a cooler microclimate. And so what we're finding is that the temperature difference, sometimes the delta can be upwards of like 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is crazy, between the full sun and then the shade that's underneath the crops. So farmers are kind of figuring out, well, maybe I can do intercropping. And so they can have some crops that are full sun, and then other ones that are kind of underneath the panels that can tolerate some shade. And the ones that are in the shade, especially if they can tolerate some cooler climates, can really thrive. So that's a great question. Yeah, during warm seasons, especially when we're having no precipitation, we find that areas that are not underneath the panels, tend to be have harsher soils, and the crops have a lower biomass when they're getting harvested compared to some of the crops that are underneath the panels, especially in some of those dry seasons. It's really apparent about the kind of beneficial nature and microclimate that's created underneath the panels. And then, so how does Lightstar intend to kind of do this in Detroit? And I think Tafira made a really good point about, the neighborhoods at the end of the day, when we finalize these neighborhood agreements, the neighborhood agreements are a contract between the developer, which is Lightstar in this case, and the neighborhood to carry out a set of solutions that the neighborhood wants to see on a solar project. So that can include AgriVolatics as a solution. Could also mean public art, tree plantings, landscaping around the site, community garden, if that's something that people want to see, fencing, so many different solutions that are basically this accountability metric for Lightstar to be able to carry out throughout the design of the project. And so after we have that neighborhood agreement finalized and AgriVolatics is the solution, we're going to go out to the fields and evaluate the soil conditions that are out on site and start prepping the site for either sowing into the ground or raised beds. I know the preference of a lot of farmers, especially if we're going to be doing this at scale, is to not do raised beds and to kind of bring in soil so that we can be able to kind of sow over time into the grounds and create a healthy soil environment. But throughout the process and really over the next couple of months, what we're doing, and we is inclusive of Patrice and T, are going around and meeting urban ag producers within the city of Detroit. And we are asking them, what's your interests? Are you willing to kind of scale up to a couple of acres? Is this something that you can envision yourself being on site and doing? And so we're kind of having those conversations right now. And so if there's people here in this session that are really interested in doing agrivoltaics, I am more than happy to. Hydroponics, it's not something that we've explored, but it's something that we could definitely take a look at and see if there would be an opportunity there for farmers to be able to do hydroponics. But yeah, we are kind of doing that right now, talking with farmers and trying to kind of come up with a game plan about how, if the neighborhoods decide to do agrivoltaics, what farmers are going to be on site, how can we support them best, and, kind of take them to the finish line and then start growing, growing season of 2026. The plan right now is to be in construction of these projects in 2025. So we are intending, at least over the next couple of months, about having these conversations with farmers, coming up with a farm management plan, and then finalizing these agreements with the farmers come early next year. And then once the project is under construction, kind of start to go into more of the details about, what are the additional costs, looking at grant opportunities with Patrice and the Office of Sustainability, and really just trying to make it a hospitable environment and also attractive environment for people to come on the land and start farming produce from day one. So that's what I have so far. If people have questions about agrivoltaics, more than happy to answer those. But yeah, I really appreciate the time and people being attentive.
Yeah, we appreciate y'all. Thank you, Owen. So we're gonna open it up for questions if there are more questions that may have came up. But that's the end of our presentation. So we'll take any questions that you might have. And feel free to come off mute. You don't have to type your questions in at this point if you want to come off mute and ask.
Sure. Yeah, the question I put in was about the storage units for the power, just because from what I know about solar arrays, like typically the environmental contaminants come from the battery storage if there's something damaged and it leaks. And especially since there's going to be food production on these sites. Yeah, I just kind of want to know where those batteries are going to be and how they're going to be environmentally safe.
Yeah, so for White Star's proposal, we did not include battery storage in any of our sites that we offered up or bidded on. So that's not something that we have a lot of experience about. And like you said too, with combining agrivoltaics with battery storage with the potential fire hazard and potential contaminants, it's not something that we really want to combine on site, and we would rather kind of keep those separate. So. Yeah, we are not planning on doing battery storage on either of these sites or future sites.
Sweet. Do you want to talk about how that power is being moved in, Owen?
You mean to the
like it's not being stored, but it's being
it's being distributed. Yeah. So when we generate the power on site, is going into feeder lines. So those kind of long dangly lines above houses. We are going to be tapping into that grid infrastructure to be able to bring the project online. So we are not doing battery storage on our sites. But we are using the existing infrastructure and potential infrastructure upgrades that are going to be present on site.
I know.
So my next question is just like in terms of Detroit businesses and the procurement process for things that maybe aren't part of your contract. If you're going to be running it through the power lines, you're setting up lines. Are you including like tree clearing with that, or is that something that's going to be open for Detroit businesses to bid on to make sure that there's nothing that's going to damage those lines?
Yeah, so what we're going to do is we are going to submit our interconnection application. So interconnection is basically the process for our project to go onto the grid. So we're going to submit that application, and then essentially after a couple of steps, the utility kind of tells us what we need to do to be able to bring this project online. And so that might entail some potential tree clearings, but usually the utility, we have to pay utility, in this case DTE, to do those upgrades. So they give us a bill about kind of what the estimated cost is, and then we basically put in a dollar amount for that estimated upgrade based on the site, and that's kind of the process. So I think it's really up to DTE, and I know from what they present today is that they use primarily Detroit labor for all their upgrades in the city. At least that's what they said on the presentation today. So
right. So I guess then Patrice, for the or Tafira, for the landscaping that you guys are planning around this, is that something that's going to be under city services, or is that going to be open for procurement contracts? How's that going to work?
Yeah, so I think I'll start on, but Lightstar is responsible for the maintenance of the space as well, and as well as DTE will be responsible for their particular project. So it's three, and DTE has one. And so what Lightstar has decided to do, and I'm not very familiar with what DTE proposed, but maybe T can chime in there. But what Owen's group is proposing is that they bring the farmer on to help with the maintenance, and then Owen can kind of go into what that looks like.
Yeah, so we structure agreements with farmers in a number of different ways. But for some of the kind of landscaping that happens around the site, we can have a farmer that includes that as a part of their kind of maintenance area. But we can also contract that out as well too, to if there's someone that wants to mow or do that landscaping, that's also a possibility as well too. But within the array, the farmer area, so if they're growing crops, they'll also have responsibilities to be able to kind of do vegetation management of some of the existing weeds and grass that's surrounding the site, to be able to kind of take care of that land.
Owen, I have a quick question. More about the kind of engagement of a farmer on these sites. You did say that much of the decisions will be made along the way with a community input, but your traditional business model, does your business do the farm plan and then you just hire a farm manager or farmers to implement that, or do you do any sort of like do you ever subcontract with farmers, do like equity partnerships? Where does the produce go? Can you speak to like the range of options that's available with the actual farming business components?
Yep. Yeah, I can maybe just walk through kind of how, like, what we typically do with farmers, and what's the kind of process for bringing a farmer on board. So typically with our projects, when we're doing in rural areas, we will identify land, talk with the landowner, and then we'll kind of sign an agreement to build a solar project on their land. And then when it gets to the farmer aspect, usually what we'll do is ask the landowner if they want to farm the land. If not, we will go out and find a tenant farmer that will come onto the land and be able to farm it. And so from the very beginning, we kind of identify a farmer, and then we ask them, what do you want to do on the land? And so if it's in a rural community and they want to do soybeans, we're like, great. We match them up with our agronomists that we consult with, and then they come up with a farm plan, our agronomists and the farmer that we've identified. And they come with a farm plan about kind of what's going to be planted on site, what's the amendments that are needed in terms of like fertilizer, irrigation, all that, and then when's the harvest schedule, and then what's the expected kind of crop yields on a per acre basis. And so that's a farm plan that's created with the agronomist. And then for the farmer itself, we have a farming license agreement, which is a formal contract between Lightstar and then the farmer that's going to be on the land. And in that contract stipulates kind of the responsibilities of Lightstar in terms of entering into this agreement, and then of the farmer. And then also within there kind of details what are the kind of benefits to the farmer? And so a couple of those are it's free land. So we do not charge farmers to come onto the land and farm it. Second, we give them a stipend on a per acre basis. And that's per year. So, it ranges, based on whether it's grazing, commodity crops, specialty crops. We pay them a stipend per acre to really kind of bring them back year after year. And then third, we also provide an agronomist that they can ask questions with any time of the year while they're producing, and also, pre-construction. So if they have any questions or concerns, they can go to our agronomy partner and ask them, and they can get answered right away. So those are the kind of benefits and the kind of process for kind of bringing a farmer on board.
And where does the produce go
Oh,
typically?
so the produce, yeah, that's the last bit. Sorry, thank you for reminding me. So the produce bit, all of the farmer is responsible for figuring out kind of the end market solution for their produce or their kind of animal production. So we do not take anything off what the farmer makes on the land. So whatever the farmer produces is entirely theirs, and they can be able to kind of distribute it, whether that's to a food bank, to markets, to a local farmers market. Whatever they want is up to them to kind of decide what that end market solution is.
Yeah. Is there a possibility to like bring that up in some of the community conversations? Because I know like Detroit has like 19 census tracts that are food deserts. I personally would love to see some requirement for the farmers to donate food waste or some excess to some of the food banks in the neighborhoods.
Yeah. To my understanding, that's already happening. Miss Jerry at Oakland Avenue is donating food in some cases. There are several farmers working with the Eastern Market in the USDA LFPA program. And so if there's extras coming out of that, of course, Eastern Market has donated in the past. We've worked with some of your organizations, so Rachel, it's really good to hear you. I wish I could see you, but it's good to hear you. Being partners in that space really kind of helps us communicate and know where the food needs to go. And so, to from my perspective, I would say that this is going to help bring an economic benefit to the farmer. It's going to help beautify neighborhoods where right now it's a lot of open land and blight happening in these spaces. So it's going to be a beautification kind of thing going on with different. I seen Mama Erin question in the chat about will there be pollinators? Yes, we welcome all of those different kind of growing capacities in the space, as long as they kind of like fit within. We were looking at sunflowers today, and those mammoth sunflowers probably wouldn't be a crop that we want to grow in this space because they're so large. They can grow over 8 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And so my hope is to this would help farmers scale where we didn't think that was possible in the city before I started
Right.
this role. So it helps them scale, but then it opens up their ability to get their food in other markets. So I think that it is possible. I've been in rooms and at the table with like food banks who want to source from our local farmers, but
Mm-hmm.
because they don't have enough
Right.
to satisfy some of those larger orders, we don't see that food being, inserted in the system like I
Mm-hmm.
think it could and should. And so this is going to allow that to take place, I think, in a natural, authentic way. And so I hope that helps. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, again, we do want to encourage no food waste. So make food. We want to
Yeah.
encourage that. So I hope that there is some pathways to donating um where we see the need. And so I Owen also talked about community gardens. So it's not just going to be a economic thing for the
Mm-hmm.
farmers in the area to take advantage of, but it's also going to be a place where community can come and gather and grow things that they like together or they might like in their individual households, but it's a possibility that community gardens are going to come out of this, and we all know how community gardens look and work in our spaces. So of course that's my long-winded answer of saying yes, Rachel, we want to donate a portion of those production crops to the community that surrounds these areas and in Detroit in general.
Yeah.
Awesome. I did have one more question for Owen, just thinking about how this is going to overlap with other utilities, because obviously it's a farm, there needs to be water. So are you guys coordinating with EWSD to make that work? Or like if there's a line break, how would that affect the array? Can you just give us a little bit more clarity around mixed utilities?
Yeah, so we are going to be coordinating with the water department or water provider to be able to tap into existing lines so that farmers can use that. In the event of a water main break, obviously when we have panels up on top of, water main and they need to do some maintenance, that's something that's being discussed with the city right now. And we also understand that if there's going to be farmers on the property, that's something that we do not want to interrupt farming operations. So that's going to be something that when we have evolving discussions with the city, there might be water mains that they identify that may be offsite that we can be able to tap into, that we can transfer water to. There's a couple of ways in which we're going to kind of have to, understand, I think early on, whether or not the neighborhood wants the AgriVolatics, but if that's the case, be able to kind of, operate or have a emergency management plan if there needs to be, repairs to water main on site, and what that means for the farming operation for the solar developer or the solar operator at that point, to be able to kind of, keep their panels up on the ground, and not have to take those down.
So since that sounds like something, I'm sorry, I know I said that was my last question, but it just kind of, you're talking made me think of this. Since it sounds like you're in the midst of that discussion with EWSD, is it possible that you can also look at maybe ways that we can do rainwater collection on those farms with the panels somehow, instead of relying on or having to retrofit a bunch of pipes underneath the space that's just being used for panels and farming?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for rainwater collection, it is something that's been done on agrivoltaic sites and even non-agrivoltaic sites to be able to kind of offset some of that water usage that happens when you are kind of, for more dry climates, especially, they have a lot of water usage to be able to clean the panels. But water collection is something that we can definitely explore and kind of see what's the cost differential for doing kind of rainwater collection versus doing water main tapping, and then kind of see what that difference is going to be. Because for farmers on site, the water usage that they use is going to be kind of incumbent on them. So if we can be able to kind of offset that and have a way in which we can, set up a system to be able to kind of, lessen some of that water usage or even, completely eliminate that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I think if it's possible for you to get some substantial info on that, I think that would be good, just because DWSD wants to reduce load on the combined system, and that would like negate all of the pipes that are underneath there. And it would also be a lot less invasive to the neighborhood to put in a rainwater collection system than to like dig up pipes and repair them.
I have a quick question for clarity. Can you hear me? I'm sorry, I'm in another meeting.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. So, when you were talking about the community gardening portion, sorry, I'll speak up a little. When you were talking about the community gardening portion of this, and in another meeting, you said that for liability purposes, that the solar array area would be under lock and key, and that you wouldn't want too many people coming and going. So could you discuss how that looks?
Yeah, I can clarify that. I brought back to our company, kind of some of the information and feedback that we got, because originally, we were, kind of a little bit, we just didn't think it was possible to kind of do community garden setup on our solar facilities, but we talked to our director of asset management in our insurance company as well too, and kind of came up with a solution. And we're kind of, it's constantly evolving as discussions take place internally, but kind of setting up potentially a fenced off area that would be just for the community access. So that farmers or kind of community members can be able to have their plot of land underneath solar panels, but it would be in a contained area, maybe fenced off from the rest of the kind of solar project. So to answer your question, yes, that was something I wasn't as certain about, I think, on a previous call, but as I kind of clarified with people internally, we came up with a solution, something that our insurance provider was more comfortable with as we move forward. So.
Thank you.
Ivy.
Question.
Yep, go ahead.
As far as in terms of acreage, what's the least amount of land requirement as far as that one of these projects could be put on, and is there a maximum acreage?
You mean for the farmer to take on, or for just the project in general?
For the farmer to take on as well as in general.
Yeah.
A least amount of land requirement, or as far as acreage is concerned?
So in terms of a least amount of acreage that we would want to see from some of the farmers on site, I don't have an exact number right now, but we really don't also have a maximum number of acreage that we would kind of limit a farmer to. As I've kind of had discussions with Patrice and Tef here and other urban farmers in Detroit, I think one of the things that, comes up a lot is how do they scale up their operation? I think there's a lot of interest from a number of farmers that kind of take on additional acreage. But I think it's really important to kind of come up with a game plan about how it's going to take place, what are the kind of financial mechanisms and, equipment that they need to get to be able to kind of make this kind of vision a reality. So I think to answer your question, I don't think we have a minimum acreage currently, but we also encouraging, farmers to think big. And, if there is a desired acreage that you're kind of, have in mind for one of the two sites, more than happy to kind of come up with a game plan about how that would look like.
Okay.
And I will also add real quick to your question, David, that an acre of land is equivalent to about 10 to 13 residential lots. So those lots that you are growing on now, if you have a community garden or a side lot that you're gardening on, just imagine having 10 to 13 of those, and that's 1 acre.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So when we say we want farmers to think big, yes, but we want you to think reasonably too. Like questions that we asked when we put out the application for Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund awardees are like, are you able to take care of the land that you're asking for? Because that's an important question. Like, so think about that. Like, yes, I might want to, do 2 or 3 acres, but that's multiplied by 10 to 13 lots each acre. So just think about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're envisioning, there's going to be a number of farmers that are going to come up on both sites. It's not going to be one farmer that's going to do 40 acres or one farmer that's going to do 22 acres on the Groshaw Finley site. We envision that this is going to be a number of farmers accessing the site. So,
right on. Yeah, I think that's what Rachel's question is referring to.
It's just going to be open
yeah, sort of. So, like, I'm hearing you say that you're seeing more than one farmer managing those 30-acre arrays or however many acres they end up being. So if it's multiple like in terms of like crop diseases or crop management, if they're sharing adjacent spaces, like what are you going to do if conflicts arise or there's differences in practices that people don't want those kinds of things mixing? So if it's not individuals and it's not cooperatives where they're already agreed to be on the same page, it's independent farmers working adjacent to each other, that seems kind of like asking for trouble.
Yeah. Patrice might have a
Yeah,
better,
this came up
yeah.
with Travis today. He asked that question, which is a really good question. I think going in, of course, we're going to have those community meetings around the community agreement. I'm excited about that because I've never really been a part of navigating community agreements. So I'm going to be learning along the way. I also want to and think that we should think through a farmer agreement on the land so that, for example, and Travis kind of gave this example earlier today when we visited him, was no tilling is a thing, that he practices. Maybe what we can find is that there are 3 to 4 farms who want to come on the space together and they want to all practice no till. They might want to also practice just regenerative growing practices in general. We are promoting that. We want that. Just remember what we talked about in the earlier slides in this presentation is that how do we reduce our greenhouse gases? So we want to think clean when we're talking about growing different crops and bringing those practices into this space. We want to make it all make sense. So we're hoping that and nothing's going to be perfect. And I know it sounds easier said than done, but we're hoping that this is a community space and community minded. And so we're going to encourage farmers to grow succinctly and if possible similar growing practices. We want to bring those kind of farmers into the space so that we can avoid all of the conflict, be proactive instead of reactive. We don't want to make people mad.
Mhm.
We got to get this right. We have to if we want to grow this kind of concept across the city. So it's
Mhm.
imperative that we get this right. So we're asking farmers to think through what those community growing
Mhm.
practices would look like.
And
Have you guys? Oh,
just to piggyback off that, Patrice, this is actually, there are tons of examples throughout the city where we've very successfully achieved that, right? Like just look at Grown in Detroit, the collective there. That's like, 40 to 50 growers every single season that have shared practices so that they're able to, bring one product to market under the Grown in Detroit name. There's a ton of collaboration in our community. And I think like even when there is issues, it's usually a great opportunity just to build kind of relationships and, power, because when people have disagreements about how something should be seeded or harvested, and they work through it, that is an that's excellent practice for being able to advocate for bigger and more important things.
mhm. Yeah. I think I would like to see maybe some involvement of like Send or the Community Wealth Fund or some organization that can maybe give participating or interested farmers information on forming cooperatives, just because that's a little bit more formal. It's a little bit more directed by the farmers themselves, and which kind of leads to my next question, which I dropped in the chat, which is like who these agreements that you're having the farmers make, like who's going to be enforcing all of that, and like what's the city's capacity to do that?
You mean for the farming license agreements, correct? So between us and the farmer?
Yeah, so the land use, like making
Yeah.
sure that everybody's on the same page and there's no conflicts and that they're being collaborative. Like, how is that going to be enforced?
We between us and the farmer, we have a contractual, we're gonna have a contractual obligation to, if there's any kind of, dispute between us and the farmer. Between farmers, that's a great question. I think what we would intend or hopefully have is, people hopefully being able to, resolve that between themselves. But if we need to involve city officials and maybe have Patrice kind of help out as a third party there. I think it would be maybe beneficial to have someone else kind of there on the ground to kind of help resolve these issues.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. I mean, whew, I'm working in that space right now with Black farmers in the Black Farmer Land Fund. Grow Op is a producer's grow op or co-op that's being formulated. We know that there are other different styles of farmers coming together in across the city to do like projects together. So my only testament is what I've been helping farmers navigate so far in that grow op space. And we learn a lot about you know, being open, coming to the table, talking to one another, not holding back, not being silenced or feeling like we're being silenced. So I think, I've learned a lot in this space with the farmers and the grow up for the last 3 years. We're in our third year in the Detroit Black Farmer Land Fund grow up space. And it's been a very interesting ride. But I think what we do is we respect each other's space and our own individual opinions about things. We listen, we learn from each other, and I don't mind navigating that kind of um arbitration space, like just arbitrating and listening and making sure that we're helping with communication between farmers. So I think that's in my wheelhouse as the urban ag person. So I would say that that's one of the ways that we plan to help. I don't want to use the word enforce. It sounds so harsh, but help move the things that we're doing together in community along in this farming space. So yeah, we want to hold people accountable is what the short answer is to what they agreed to, and we have to all be willing to do that with and for each other so that we can grow.
I have a quick question. I hope it's quick, and maybe I missed this already. What phase are you in with this whole program? Where are we?
We started phase one, I feel like today, which we got the contract approved at what was it, like 2 o'clock this afternoon, Patrice up here. So yeah. So that was the biggest kind of hurdle for us right now. But the next phase is going to be community meetings. So going out, talk with residents, in the project area. So or the project boundary. So all the homes surrounding the project are going to be, subject to energy efficiency upgrades. So we're going to do kind of some community meetings around that, and then start having discussions about the neighborhood agreement to kind of understand what people in the surrounding area want to see on the solar project. And so I'm going to be coming to Detroit probably every 2-3 weeks, probably for the next probably 3 or 4 months. Just go to the community meetings. We have our community engagement partner. I don't know if you guys know Gemma Studios. They're a landscape architect firm that also does community engagement work around the city. And so they're going to be leading a lot of our community engagement work and kind of getting all the information so we can start compiling that and coming towards like an agreement with the neighborhoods.
Thank you. I appreciate this meeting. When I heard the mayor announce that these things were coming, I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. It sounded like it was going to be energy just for the businesses, but this sounds a lot better than I thought it would. So I really appreciate you keeping us informed. And so we look forward to you coming to, at least I do.
Okay. It's been very welcoming coming here. I've been coming here 3 or 4 times already before today. People in Detroit are fantastic. And I told this to Patrice when we were driving around today. This presents one of the greatest opportunities for urban agriculture probably in the country, because we are opening up close to 60 acres just in this first phase to do agriculture. That's incredible. And there also isn't really a project like this anywhere else in the world of this scale. So just to underline kind of what we're doing, every conversation, every person that's involved in this, every concern, worry is going to be inclusive of like a larger playbook that we're going to write as we go throughout this process. So I'm really looking forward to kind of engaging with everyone here and, future people as well too.
Owen, Mama Erin, did we answer your question? We have a few questions I want to go back to.
Yeah.
Would there be a baseline agricultural standard? Did we answer that for you, Mama Erin?
I don't know if is Aaron on anymore?
It's a lady.
Oh,
Erin. Oh, maybe she went off.
Yeah,
okay.
Erin is no longer on.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure we answer that. I don't know that
Yeah.
we had Owen.
Yeah, I can. So what we probably won't have a baseline agricultural standard in the first growing season as we kind of understand what's the capacity of these sites to actually produce agriculture, just because they're going to be, we're going to be trucking in soil. There's going to be kind of additional kind of considerations on site. But after a couple of growing seasons, we'll probably establish some baseline. Understand that, some seasons or some years can be tougher than others, and that can create kind of variations in kind of, agricultural output. And also maybe changing over to different crops can kind of, fluctuate that number. But typically what we have on our sites in rural areas where it's typically 1 or 2 crops, we have an agricultural baseline, based on kind of estimated yield from sites, and also our modeling that we have, and establish that within kind of our agreement. So.
For sure. And then we had D had another question. What is the name of the landscaping company again?
We don't have a landscaping company that we have contracted with or had discussions with so far.
A landscape design company?
Oh, landscape design. Sorry. It's Jima, Jima.
Oh yeah, Jima. I'm familiar.
Jima, yeah. Through Gigi Williams. So.
Yeah. I just learned about them this week.
Jim.
Yeah.
Love her. She's great.
She came highly recommended from a number of people. So I'm really excited to begin working with her. So
yeah, so it's Jima.
Yeah.
She's worked on a number of projects with us. So she knows not all landscape architects know agriculture, and she's well versed in it.
Yeah. So and then to answer the additional question about do farmers have input on the layout? Yes, the farmers will have input on the layout. We want to be as accommodating as possible, as additional equipment, gets bought or purchased, and we want to be able to kind of design a site that's going to be accommodating of that. So farmers do have input in the site design, and we encourage it.
Right on. Yeah. So we're at 7:21. We have about 30 more minutes if y'all want to hang out with us that long, or we can give y'all time back. If there are other questions, we're open to hearing more questions or comments if you have comments too.
Question. Does the farmer actually need to own the land for this project, or is this a rental, or how does that work?
The farmer, so the city is going to own all the land within the project area. So we are leasing the land from the city to utilize it. And then because we are leasing the land, we can list kind of, subcontractors within the land. So that means the farmers in this case. So the farmers are not renting the land. Technically they are renting the land, but they're not paying a fee for it. So it's kind of hard I don't know what that means, but it's like 3 or 5 years that you're on the land. We structure the contract lengths to accommodate the farmers. So, if they want to do a longer contract, great. If they want to do kind of a year to year, kind of 2 or 3 year contract, that's also something we can work with. But yeah.
I think I don't know this. Don't quote me on this, y'all. I know we video recording, but it could be a sublease. These things happen.
Sublease,
yeah, it will be like a sublease from my knowledge.
Yeah, farmers are not buying the land.
No, the city will still own the land, guys.
Yeah.
And that was if you didn't get a chance to watch the city council hearing, it was very long today. It was like 5 hours
Yeah.
long, but please go back and watch it because there are so many good things, like conversations. Is like the democracy at its best. Like you got those who are nay, who are for it, who don't know. And then there are things that came up out of these questions of the city owning the land and what the potentials of this land could be in the future and what that means for the future of Detroit. We could, do a plethora of things with the land. So the city still owns the land. This is not the first time the city has done this. Eastern Market is actually a really good example of city owned land being managed by a nonprofit in the city. And so Eastern Market is just managing a city owned piece of land, which are the sheds and the office building that it sits in. And so I think we are familiar with this way of managing land and keeping it in good health and nurturing it as it needs to be nurtured.
So what is the requirement for a farmer coming on to this project?
That's a great question. Actually, someone was asking us today about that. I would say the two requirements really is enthusiasm. One, to farm the land. I would say the second one is a vision to kind of see yourself scaling up, right? Patrice was saying kind of, what an acre is in terms of plots. It's about 15 or 13, some number. It's a lot of like parcels of land, and that's stacked across the whole site. I think one of the things that we want to see from farmers is, are they willing to kind of come on the site? Is this something that they want to kind of see? And then second, do they want to become full-time farmers? Is this something that they're interested in kind of pursuing as a full-time passion? And if that's the case and you have a vision about kind of how you could scale this up, or maybe you don't know what that vision, you don't know how you can scale up, but you have a passion or some idea about how it's going to take shape, we have an agronomist that can help make that a reality. So we are kind of throughout the process trying to engage farmers and see kind of what they want to see on site, and then putting that into kind of some actionable plan to be able to scale that up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Those are really good questions, David.
Yeah.
Thank you. If you're interested, I will put this out
before
there.
we wrap up, actually, I just had one quick question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
For Owen. So you did mention that some of the things like landscaping you are going to be subcontracting out. I'm sure you guys already, have started thinking about how to engage with Detroit farmers for the farming aspect of this, but what are you guys doing in terms of the other subcontracting procurement to, what is that process going to look like for Detroit-based businesses?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for all of our work that we're doing, so let's kind of talk through some of our partners. So Gemma Studios, Detroit-based business for our community engagement. Mayak Smith has an office in Detroit, so they're going to be our civil engineering partners. Elevate, which is a nonprofit that's based out of Chicago but has a strong presence within the city of Detroit. They have a Detroit accelerators program. Sorry, Detroit contractors accelerator program. So they work with Detroit-based labor to get them skilled on energy efficiency upgrades and panel installations on residential homes. So we are planning on utilizing Elevate's accelerator program, and additionally any other kind of community nonprofits that does trainings around energy efficiency upgrades to be the labor on site. And in terms of kind of some of the future, kind of contractor or subcontracting that we do, for landscaping companies, for labor and actually constructing the site, all that is going to be Detroit-based business. And I can promise you that that's not going to change. That's unwavering. We've made that commitment since our proposal, and that's something that we're sticking by throughout the whole process. So you can hold that to me in terms of the labor that we're using. It's all going to be Detroit-based. And really, it's an economic engine. So,
yeah, I 100% appreciate that. I would encourage you to push it maybe just a little bit farther, and maybe if there's a way that you can create like a one sheet explanation of how Detroit businesses can like get into that pool of potential contractors. And if you can circulate that information first and foremost through the district offices so that the businesses that are in the districts affected by, that are going to be hosts to these arrays, like have the opportunity for those businesses to like hear loud and clear that that business opportunity is available and that the city is supporting them in becoming part of that bid track.
Yep, I'm writing that down as a note. That is a fantastic idea. And even within, not even going out and publicizing that we were awarded. I mean, we've had so many requests that have come through, Patrice, through our kind of internal office about kind of businesses that are really interested in working with us and, providing labor and services to our project. We are more than willing to kind of go out and kind of create a one pager and kind of channel some of those opportunities towards people and kind of get them involved early on. So that's a great idea. Thank you, Rachel, for that.
Yep, it is a good idea. We are going to partner with the Dons too, guys, on getting community meetings out specifically for farmers. So that'll be coming soon, and whatever way we can partner with the Department of Neighborhoods, we'll do that in the future to get information out. Like I said too, make sure you're following us on Instagram. That the Office of Sustainability has its own Instagram page and social media site. So please follow us to get updated information like that. We also have like different newsletters that we put out from the Office of Sustainability and the City of Detroit, just website in general and their social media sites. We're gonna make sure that the community is engaged, and we got to do it right this time, because then that means if we don't, it's a threat to if we can do this in more spaces.
Yeah.
So those are good suggestions, Rachel.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Going back to land assessment and soil testing. So it can be millions and millions and millions of dollars to test and remediate 60 acres of land to get it up to the point where it's safe for agricultural production, particularly for the farmers who have direct contact with that soil. So who's paying for that, and how long do you think it might take?
It's a great question. We have our civil engineering partner, Manic Smith, is going to be doing phase 1 ESA, which is kind of just identifying any environmental risk on site. And then the phase 2 ESA is going to be kind of doing remediation as well too. City of Detroit, after they clear the structures on site, is going to be doing some level of remediation. We don't know what the extent of that is going to be. So whatever they do, we're going to kind of look and assess that and then be able to kind of, upgrade that existing kind of remediation to be able to kind of make those sites suitable for farming.
Yeah. That's a good question, Ashley. I've asked that. That was probably my first question to Owen.
Who is paying? So you're paying for it?
So
paying for the remediation?
The City of Detroit is doing remediation separate of what we're doing. But if there is any requirement, if there's a need to be able to do further remediation after the City of Detroit goes in and does that, we will go in and pay for that out of pocket for additional remediation efforts.
So every parcel will have a phase 1 and phase 2 assessment?
The entire parcel, the entire project area is going to have that, correct?
That part.
Yeah. It's we have to do that, as a part of our due diligence and make sure that we are not presenting a potentially dangerous opportunity to farmers that are coming on site. that would not be safe for anyone involved. So we want to make sure that we're doing that due diligence from the very beginning, and also being able to kind of build off the effort that the city of Detroit is doing in terms of remediation of the soil.
It seems like that might also inform, what areas.
We can do farming in as
Yeah.
well too. Yeah. So
So,
yeah, we would love to
mhm.
do farming and agriculture on all 60 acres of the two sites, but the reality is that it might only be half the site for the 40. I mean, we just don't know until we get site control. So that's going to kind of inform kind of what farmers we bring on as partners, and how the site's going to end up looking from like an agricultural and potentially also a pollinator perspective as well too.
Oh, and I know I mentioned it earlier, but I would be very interested in hearing about the cost difference between the soil remediation and maybe just doing some kind of hydroponic system under that array that's not involving the soil.
I mean, I would love to speak on that, but I'm not as confident or have numbers in terms of hydroponics and what that cost delta would be. So I can't really speak to that and give you a firm number. But it's not something that we are familiar with. And I think one of the things that we're trying to provide to farmers is something that our expertise, but also kind of pair that with kind of what the reality for urban farmers is, and kind of create solutions that end up kind of working for the individual farmer on site. And if hydroponics is the solution that they want to kind of advocate for, we can take a look at that and be able to kind of make a determination about what that cost differential is going to be.
Ooh, I like this conversation. I'm glad y'all thinking through questions, because that's the thing, right?
And I say that is the beauty of bringing things to the community, because community has the answers, and community is good. And always get something from these conversations, especially KGD classes. Thank you, Ashley, for having us and hosting us.
Yeah,
Uh,
this is a great segue. I will just say, I've known both Patrice and T for more than a decade now, and I think we can all agree they have what drives them is a love for community, and they both have so much integrity, and they both have such curiosity, and a drive to learn and just do better for our community. So I think, it's clear that this project is being led by two outstanding individuals, and Light Stars is Owen, you did great answering everybody's questions, and if they can rep you, we can all rep you. We are in good hands, and that doesn't mean that we won't have problems along the way, but I really believe that we'll figure out how to make this, as Owen said, like not only an example for urban cities, Rust Belt cities across the United States, but so many cities that have underutilized land, and we all need energy solutions. So looking forward to not only what's to come, but getting this this video on the web and encouraging people to see it, because I feel like we had a small but mighty group, but we will make sure that lots and lots of people see this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will invite anyone, if you have any questions or follow-up, I put my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. More than happy to hop on a call, meet you at your farm, meet you in person. I'm gonna be out in Detroit a lot, so please hit my line. I will be happy to kind of go out and meet people. And it's been great so far, kind of parading around to the different farms that Patrice has been introducing and T's been introducing me to. So the more the merrier.
Yes. Can you put your email in the chat if you can, Sheilyn? I hope I'm saying your name right.
Shaylin.
Shaylin. Sorry. Can you put your email in the chat for us?
All right, great.
Cool.
I will put this down.
Yay. Thank you. Shaylin. My bad.
A legend. Shay's a legend.
Right. I was like, wait a minute.
Family. A family of legends.
Yeah, if you're interested, please, and you want to just kind of like learn more and see if it put your toe in it. You don't got to go all in, but maybe you want to just tap your toe in it and get 1 or 2 acres. Like, let us know because we want to engage with you. Want to be as equitable as possible. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for. Of course, nothing is perfect, but we're going to do our best to make sure that we are equitable in bringing farmers into these spaces with us. I'm excited for y'all. I'm also a farmer too, but I don't get a chance to grow on these plots of land. I'm going to take this time and maximize on the land that I do have with my family and grow as much as we can and, you know, do our thing in our community because we have a community garden too. But I am excited for the farmers in the city of Detroit. You guys are being introduced to so many different opportunities, and again, this is your space. These are programs for you and what you want and how you see yourself in farming, and we are excited for what's to come. So there's more to come. This is just one project. Me and T are working on some other projects, so there's more to come, guys.
And with that, I think we can wrap up.
Ashley.
Thank you to our speakers and hosts, and look forward to seeing you guys at the next class.
Take care.
Take
Bye.
care, everyone.